And my cool fade goes through, and here we are, sort of. All right, I'm still working on the bells and whistles. I'm not perfect at it yet, but we're live on YouTube, like as mentioned, and this is recorded, and we'll go into our podcast feed as well. How are you today? It's been a crazy morning.
It has been, yeah, it's been really busy, but I'm doing well. How are you?
Oh, I have my issue is I have KUB out here doing some line work, which is probably far less important than the issues that you're dealing with on a daily basis with your job. Um, so I don't know where you want to start.
So, if we want to talk about the sixth district and what's going on in the sixth district right now, I know it's on a lot of people's minds and on their hearts. We've been seeing a surge and uptick in violence since the beginning of last year.
All right, let
And
me interrupt.
unfortunately,
I'm sorry. Let me interrupt real quick. Just for those listening, the 6th District is downtown East Knoxville. I try to give some structure to people because, again, like we were talking about as we were getting set up, I think it's unfortunate. Most of us around here aren't paying a lot of attention, don't really know what's going on. I'm a county resident, not a city resident, but like one of the weird things when you start getting into politics and governance and what's going on is like I'm District 4 in the county, but if I was in the city, which is not far from me, it's District 2 or something like that. And so I like to make sure we have a picture of it. So District 2 is downtown East Knoxville area. I wanted to get that part out. So anyway, continue.
okay. So with that said, so from the county perspective, the district that I represent would be a county District 1.
Right.
And that would be Commissioner Dacia Lundy. And so, unfortunately, we've been in the news quite a bit. We've actually made national news here in Knoxville, Tennessee, for the latest incident that happened. That was an officer-involved shooting with a young person, with a student being killed. So, again, we've seen these students that were being murdered outside of the school in the community, leaving school, and another one young lady was at her house when she was killed, and the community and the students were very adamant to say that it's not our school, it's the community that surrounds our school. And then unfortunately something bad happens inside the school, and so
Right.
just the trauma that goes along with that. I mean, I'm just really concerned about the kids going back to school this week, having to focus on ACT test in the midst of this traumatic event that just happened.
Right. On top
And
of the
now they
pandemic that they've been dealing with as well. Yeah.
Right. I mean, so just a really, really tragic and unfortunate situation all the way around. So for anybody listening, I just ask that you please, continue to keep, this community in your prayers and our city. We know what the national climate is right now, and it's not necessarily good. And people are really upset. People are frustrated. And
For
so
sure.
I'm just asking everyone to please be calm and let's wait and get the facts. The DA did a press conference this week and gave the reasons why she would not be releasing the body cam video at this particular point. However, she will allow the family of the victim to be able to view it before it's released to the public, whenever that is. So,
Right. Because
just for
there's a
the
lot of
integrity of
right. There's a lot of parts to the body cam footage, especially it's been a very hot topic. Because it's inside the school, which changes some of the conversation. It involves a minor, which changes some of the conversation. It's unclear on whether there's an actual criminal investigation that's going to be part of this, or if this is just the general let's figure out what happened investigation, or if there's actually anything illegal that's going to be added to the conversation, because we don't know those parts yet. And the vacuum of information has been quickly filled with a lot of different guesses and rumors and all that kind of stuff. And it's unfortunate. I think one of the things to keep in mind that I've learned through doing the show, I had Ron McPherson on many moons ago talking budgets and stuff like that, and it is very specifically clear to school boards that the community that surrounds the school has more impact than the money the school gets from the school count, like from the school boards and stuff like that. And so it like you were saying, it is a community issue that is boiling over into the schools. It's not a schools issue that's being pushed into the community. So that's something I've learned that I think is important to try to suss out as far as understanding of that kind of thing. And so, Seema put up, she's asking, I guess that's tomorrow. You guys meet tomorrow, right?
yes.
And so
Yes.
Seema put up,
6 o'clock.
right. She's putting up a resolution for an additional $4 million in community spending, about this particular issue, which we just did $1 million in spending, or started a process of spending about $1 million a few months ago. And I guess let's talk about that one, because you did the original one. As far as I apologize, I had it pulled up and I lost the name of that organization.
It's a long name. It's the African American Equity Restoration Resolution. So Restoration Resolution. And so the premise of that resolution was basically to look at the root causes of why we have, a population of 17% African American, but yet numbers are indicating at the time, until the new census data comes out, that 42% of that 17% population are living in poverty.
Right.
And this is generational. And
right.
So this task force, this resolution is to look at those, what are those root causes of that? What are some of the things that can be done that can help people pull themselves out of poverty? Talk about opportunity and access for those who want it. And I want to be really clear that it's not just specific to African Americans. We're looking specifically at some of those root causes, but we know that anything that helps, people in poverty, regardless of color, is going to benefit everyone. We have some agencies that's already working in those lanes, but apparently there's some gaps or something there, because I want to know what's their capacity and what's the capacity building. What are some of those strategies?
Right.
This is what the task force will be looking at specifically.
Right. Because
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. The generational poverty is the issue. It's not a skin color thing necessarily. It's just that the math shows that African Americans in this community have a higher percentage of generational poverty than some of the other ethnicities locally, I suppose is the best way to put it. And because I think that's one of those things that I'm realizing the more I get into it, and I lean super libertarian. That's how I kind of go. It's like, figure it out on your own. That's take care of yourself. I'll take care of myself. Everybody's happy. But there's definitely a difference in starting lines, regardless of who you are and where you are in the thing. And so some people start way ahead than others, and how to put something in place to help catch up for those that have started when their starting line was 10 miles behind mine. And trying to at least respect that as a premise is something that I've struggled with. We've had a lot of conversations on here about like white fragility and white privilege and kind of stuff like that. And it's one of those things that, I struggle with trying to wrap my head around. I just don't get it. Like it's foreign to me, which I guess it should be logically, but it's just, how to address and talk about these as a communal and as a government and political issue as a white member of the community, without coming off as a racist, is a really tough one for me. And it's not the intent. It's just, it's like, I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to ask the questions, and I joke about it all the time. I'm dumb enough to ask the question, which might get me in trouble sometimes. So if I do one of those today, I'm sorry, everybody, but it might happen. Talking about racial issues and long-term poverty issues and stuff like that. One of the problems I've found is that people are scared to talk about it because of some of the labels that come out of having the conversation. And I'm dumb enough and stubborn enough that I'm going to ask the question anyway. And if I come out looking bad for it, that's fine. I know who I am. I know that I have no hate for people based on stupid reasons. And if me trying to understand makes me the bad guy, then I guess I want to be the bad guy, because I think that's a big problem we're having is people don't understand.
Right. now. And I appreciate you making that statement that, you're just trying to understand, because a lot of times we don't necessarily understand the issues enough to be able to make an informed decision, or to take a position that's more rational and that's, again, more empathetic and compassionate towards the people that it impacts. So two things come to mind when we talk about that. It's, implicit biases and systemic racism, which are processes and policies that are embedded in everyday practice that really are, racist toward a group of people. And I'm not necessarily saying that's always Black people. I mean, in some instances, it's people of other nationalities.
Right.
But those have become the norm. And a lot of times we don't look for that.
Well, clear as day.
So we have to have different places.
Right. Yes. Clear as day. Redlining was a thing. It happened here. We all know it happened here. If you look at the history books and you follow the stories and stuff like that, redlining happened here. And if we're talking about generational poverty being a huge issue, well, when it was impossible to own a home because of redlining, it's more likely that you're going to have long-term poverty issues, because for most Americans, the number one wealth-generating item they have is home ownership. And when there was an actual legal thing in place that made it super hard for certain groups of people to own homes, it's going to be generations of time before that catch up, where other families who've been owning homes the whole time, they have that thing. Grandma dies and gives the home to the kids or the grandkids or whatever, and they sell it and split the profits or whatever. It's a big number for and especially if you're already in a position where you own your own home and you get a home in a situation like that. That's just cash. I mean, that's just decades old cash that your family gets that other families that didn't have an opportunity to have grandma own a home don't have. I don't know the solutions to it. That is one of the things that is the big struggle, is how do we do this fairly? But that's something that I've come to realize quite clearly as I'm trying to understand more of what's going on.
And Steph, that's a good point, because when you talk about home ownership, then the word equity has to come to mind for all of us. And so think about the number of people who are not homeowners or who've not had anyone in the recent generations to own a home. So there's that lack of equity. There's that lack of seeing that pride in home ownership. There's that lack of, maybe you've not seen anyone in your family, go to college or have what you would consider a good job, be able to, things that some of us take for granted in the past, like being able to go on a vacation. It's amazing to find that when you talk to some people, I mean, people have never been outside the state or not been outside of Knoxville,
Right.
especially kids. And so those things alone are pretty disturbing, but I mean, those are realities for a lot of people.
Right.
So with this,
I can't remember who exactly said it, but there was the quote was something along the lines of, if you are well-traveled, you are not going to be a racist person. That's a terrible paraphrase of it, but you go out and experience other cultures. You can't help yourself, but you're going to enjoy the diversity instead of hating the diversity. So well-traveled people become more diverse and friendly people, I guess, is the general premise of that.
Well, it's exposure. I mean, if all you ever do is stay around the same people,
right?
The same people who think like you, who look like you, who act like you,
right?
In many instances, that's all you know. So anything else is foreign to you that you may not like, or you will see different stereotypes of other classes of people, and then that automatically, or there's a bad experience, or you're reading about stuff in the news, it's a bad experience, and then all of a sudden you look at every person of that ethnicity and you think that that's who they are and that's how they act.
Right,
because that's not true.
Right, because we as human beings,
that's not true. I mean,
yeah, because we as human beings, we tend to self-segregate, and not necessarily in the racial sense, but we tend to self-segregate. And if you never get out of your circle that you grow over time, like you said, you're going to be more capable of the stereotyping of the others and stuff like that. And it could be a self-segregation through income bracket or skin color or whatever. There's a lot of different ways that we do that as human beings. And if you don't take the time to get out of it, it's easy to fall prey to that. I agree 100%. Right. So one of the things to me, and we kind of touched on it a little bit indirectly there, is, we kind of hinted at the fill in the vacuum with rumor and stuff like that, and the way we as a community tend to react to situations. One of the things that's been frustrating to me is this turned into a gun control thing. I'm a Second Amendment person. Again, the libertarian in me says you should and that kind of stuff. But that being beside the point, like, I don't feel like this particular one or most of the stories that have happened this year, unfortunately, are as much about gun access as they are about community. And I don't know how to suss that out as far as having the conversation. Gun control conversation, that is a conversation worth having, but I feel like it's a narrative move that we are doing, or that's happening. It's like, this is a good excuse to add these gun controls that we wanted anyway, even though they don't necessarily apply. I don't know. What is your take on I mean, we got this, the constitutional carry thing going on, which I have my permit. I went through the process, so I paid money to not need it now, but I got it, but whatever. And so I guess, what is your take on that, and from your community outlook, as far as the constitutional carry and what we should be looking at? Is it a gun issue or is it other stuff?
So, and I want to be real clear, because I think that there was some misconception all the way around as it relates to where Gwen McKenzie stands on gun ownership when I introduced the gun show resolution, which that resolution was to get gun shows out of East Knoxville, which had been labeled a gun zone. It was very, very offensive to people who had been labeled a gun zone due to violence and crime and deaths, and have guns being sold there. Again, I tell people, we're gun owners, and so I have no problem with legal gun ownership. at all. So I wanted to be really clear about that. So it was just that over the years, I mean, people in the community have been very upset about that. And so when I took that to then Mayor O'Hara, and she looked at, so what other public city facilities could they be housed in? All of them were in close proximity to schools. So Coliseum, close proximity to Green School.
Okay.
The convention center, close proximity to Ellen and Stena County. So that was kind of the premise. And so decision was made collectively that, hey, let's just let those be in private facilities and not in the city facilities, just for the sake, because you go back and you think about, we're dealing with a whole lot. I mean, at this point, mass shootings are happening weekly now. And so the thing is that there's a lot of people dealing with mental health issues. There's a lot of stressors out there. I mean, COVID has exacerbated a lot of things. People's frustration, if they already are suffering from some mental health issues, and people are just not reaching out to get help. But as it relates to back to the original question, what is my take on the correlation of, guns and the violence that we've seen an uptick in? I mean, I won't lie to you. I am concerned about how these kids are getting such easy access to weapons.
Right.
So that is a concern, so I'm going to shoot straight with you on that one, no pun intended. But, that is a concern. And I feel like if there are people who are illegally selling guns to kids, if that's the case, I don't know how they're getting them. And I don't know that, I haven't had any answers on that. I haven't pushed that to a large degree, but it's an issue. I mean, for a child,
right? I agree.
And we're talking about kids,
right?
Unless you are a child that has the guidance of a parent and you're out, because we have kids that go hunting with their parents, that's different. That's a totally different circumstance because you have some guidance. You're being taught how to use that weapon safely and for the correct purposes. When you have kids that are just getting guns off the streets for ill purposes and people are selling them to them knowing that no 12, 13, 14, 15, underage kid, it's about the law. That's where I come from.
I get it.
It's not about, I'm not trying to take anybody's guns because I don't want anybody taking mine.
Right. And and that brought up, so we were talking this weekend on the show about this specifically. And I do this a lot where I'll have random thoughts that I don't really think about before I say it out loud and record it and share it with the world. I magically have the best ideas ever, but I kind of threw it out as an idea and we talked about it and explored it a little bit. How crazy would it be to have, again, you're not in school system stuff, but how ridiculous and would it be to try to start a program to teach kids to properly handle weapons? Like in an actual, like you were saying, like a parent
in a school setting?
Maybe. I don't know. Cause I think that I get it. I get both sides of this one for sure. But it's like we do sex ed in the schools, right? We do DARE programs in the schools.
There's health education. I don't know.
Right. Well,
I think the colleges may call it sex ed, but in schools it's more like health education, and it's just about like the physiology piece of it.
Right.
Of the human anatomy, yeah.
And I had Miss Kimberly, I'm blanking out on her last name, from the sheriff's office on a couple weeks ago, and she was talking about how Sheriff Spangler's excited to get the DARE program rolling again. But again, it's one of those, like, we have programs that we are introducing concepts and ideas about things that most parents don't necessarily want their children engaged in, but it exists and it's out there and everybody knows about it. So let's teach our kids how to handle it properly. And I feel like firearms kind of falls under that category. Logically, at least, it's like, we don't have health education for kids because we want them to go out and have sex. We want them to know some of the consequences of having sex, of childbirth and other diseases and stuff like that. We want them to know if they are going to engage in it, how to do it as safely as possible and that kind of stuff. Same thing with the DARE program. It's not, we don't do the DARE program to get you to go out and smoke weed, but we get you to understand some of the side effects and problems that you could have with it. And I feel like gun safety is a very similar issue that we can't do. And like, I understand that we can't, like, there's no way, I know it's a crazy idea, but I think it makes sense to me as a way to, because outside of hunting, the number one accidental death with weapons is people that don't know how to handle them shooting themselves or somebody that they're with. And so it's like, it's a couple hundred a year. It's not a huge number, from the data that I looked up on it, at least. But anyway, but again, the same class, you have here's the legal ramifications of accidentally shooting your best friend or shooting your neighbor, or here's the legal ramifications of carrying it one way or the other. I don't know. And again, it's an idea that I just came up with, and I throw it out there like it's genius.
Yeah. Now, yeah. So I would not disagree in the context of knowing the law around, things around gun violence, the ramifications. How many kids know that if you steal a gun, it's a felony? A kid could steal someone's purse and they have a gun in it, not knowing that there's a gun in it. And now that kid has a felony because there was a weapon inside that purse. A lot of people don't know that law is out there.
Right.
I would say that, I'm not in favor of any kid having a gun. I think if we do some type of safety, it would be don't touch them, leave them alone. But again, the number that I would be thinking about in the context is how many kids are using guns to commit suicide.
Right.
The access, and that's if your parents have a gun in the house, are they keeping it in a safe place? Is it locked?
Right.
Does their kid have access to it? And there was a rash of that years and years ago. You'd have little kids finding a gun that the parents own and the safety's not on it, and they accidentally kill a sibling or a friend that's over. So from that aspect around gun safety, absolutely. Understanding and knowing gun laws, absolutely.
Well, because for me personally, like I have a couple here in the house. I have my hunting rifle and I have my carry pistol, and just randomly from time to time, I'll get my pistol out, I'll clear it, I'll make sure it's empty, and I will just hand it to one of my kids. And as soon as I hand it to them, they go through the process of how to make sure that gun is not dangerous to them at that immediate moment. And for me, that's important because at some point outside of my supervision, they're going to come across one with one of their friends or somebody like that. I hope not, but it's a possibility. Right. And the worst thing in the world for me would be them to be dumb and take the gun from a friend or whatever and accidentally shoot themselves or one of their friends. But I know that they know that as soon as you touch it or as soon as it's near you, you make sure it is safe. That's one of those things that any gun owner that's done any sort of training or even just dad training or something like that, they know that. Like I joke all the time. I've got plenty of friends that have, and a buddy of mine bought a new pistol and he was showing it off and he was excited about it, and he took it out and he emptied it, cleared it, made sure it was safe, handed it to me, and I go through the process again. That's just one of those rules that I know that everybody, in my opinion, should know. It's not saying you should handle guns, you should use guns, you should have one or carry or whatever. That's your personal choice. But to know that when it is on you to be safe with one, you have the basics of you're not going to shoot yourself or your friends just because you know the basics of making sure this weapon is clear. But anyway, that's one of my things that I've been kind of throwing around. I'm also on a big metro push.
So Steph, and part of
Go ahead.
Right. So let me ask you this. I mean, even in that context of educating your own children about gun safety and those types of things, I mean, does the conversation ever come into play around? Because when I did the training years ago, and that was the first time I'd ever shot a gun. I mean, it was kind of traumatic for me knowing that when I pulled that trigger, that I now have the power of life and death in my hands. I could take someone's life. Right. And so, do you get into? I'm just asking you just personally, do you talk to your kids about knowing that with this one bullet you could take someone's life, you could kill someone?
Yes,
and what
absolutely.
That means, and responsibility. Okay,
right. On the same thing as they know as soon as they touch it, how to clear it, make sure it's safe. They know that even if you know it's clear and safe, you don't point that thing at anything that you're not okay with going away. Whether it's the dog or me or your Nintendo or whatever, you do not point the barrel of that thing at anything that you are not okay with losing. And those are the two rules in guns in my house is that one, well, I guess three, you don't ever touch it without me knowing about it. You don't go get it. It's locked in the safe anyway. But, if you ever come across it, you clear it, and you never point it, regardless of how clear you know it is. You never point it at anything you don't want to kill. That's the rule. That is basic gun 101 in my household. And so, and again, I think it's one of those things that whether the weight of what killing something is rational to them yet. I don't know. My oldest is 10, So they're a little on the lower end of that. But, you know, they understand, you know, again, I'm a hunter. I brought food home and stuff like that. They understand what a dead animal is. And I'm pretty sure the rationale jumps across. Whether they understand the full weight of it, I don't know yet. It'll get there at some point, but they know that part 100% anytime.
Right.
You walk,
You know, I'm concerned about, you know, what a lot of the violence and the murders are doing to our children psychologically
for
from a
sure.
trauma
Well,
standpoint, and even seeing it nationally on the news. Like, are kids numb to it now? Are kids, you know, it's no big deal to them because maybe they're not old enough
it's
and
the
can't
video
really fully.
games. I
Yeah,
don't
the video games, right, right. So some of those things that they're supposed to, absolutely, that they don't rationalize that once someone you shoot someone, it's not they're not getting up like in a video game. They're not coming back.
right.
And the trauma to know that now we have a child that will turn into an adult who has to live with that if they have any sense of conscience that they took someone's life and that, you know, justifiably or unjustifiably. And not only did it impact that take that person's life, but the impact that it's had to that person's family
For sure.
and to their friends and everyone. Yeah.
I think there's a mountain of factors into, I guess, what I would call the value of life, and how people see the value of life. I'd say there's a mountain of factors, and I'd surely agree with you that desensitized to it is part of it. You know, because again, like one of the things with this particular situation, and I don't know, I've been told different stories and stuff, whatever, but Candace, that video that was floating around, from one of the neighbors' posts, it was like Wednesday last week. It got up. It broke down the story according to some people of what actually happened on last Monday, and oh crap, I lost my train of thought. So the story was, and from my understanding, as more information's coming out, it's likely that it's untrue. But the story was at least that Mr. Thompson Jr. was afraid of his girlfriend's stepdad, and that's where the genesis of this story came up. And again, I don't know the facts behind that, but to me, my take from that story is that this child, I mean, 17 is pretty close to adult, but this child doesn't have an outlet to go find somebody to protect him from a situation. And that to me is the bigger issue than the gun part of the issue, in where we started, is that in this child's outlook, in his desensitization of the neighborhood and what he lives in, the principal or the teacher or the school officer or something like that is not the person to go to when you have a problem like this. And that, I think, is a bigger factor in the problem of a situation like we had last week than it is necessarily the gun thing in and of itself, I suppose.
Well, what I'll say about that is that the girlfriend's mother did an interview on the news.
I read that, yeah.
And said that she made the phone call to the police that he had a gun or something that precipitated. I mean, again, you said that's a child, and you're right. We don't understand what's in a child's mind but we do know that as children, they don't think and can rationalize logically through situations as an adult would. Because I would think, you know, would this child not, hey, call mama or call daddy and say, hey, here's what's going on. So
right.
I think that, you know, for us to speculate is just, you know, I dare would not do that.
I understand.
Because we don't know all the circumstances and we really don't know what all the truth is. But and so this is why I've been pretty quiet out of respect, number one, for the family of the young man that was killed in the school, but also just waiting for the facts. We know the investigation has not been closed yet. We know that TBI, if there's an officer involved shooting, that they take the lead in it. So KPD does not have any say in how soon it's going to be closed. Now we'll tell you this, that all the rumors that happened, I don't know where that stuff came from, if someone was leaking information or what, but it was so wrong, and it got this national attention, and it got all this so much confusion started in the community. And I do know that one concern was that parents did not get notified immediately due to the situation or whatever. I hope that that's a lesson learned, and that the school and the school board are working together when there's situations such as this. How can they get an announcement or recording out to the parents of whatever school it is more quickly, because I was there with family members standing across from the school and everything, and people were just, and justifiably so, very worried and concerned
Right.
when they couldn't get in touch with their children, not knowing what's going on inside the school until they were able to talk to their children. And then here comes the anger that, why did no one notify us? Why do we have to see it on Facebook and
Right.
people calling and hearing about it on the national news? And so I think that within itself was unacceptable. I know it was a crisis situation, but we've got to have better protocols in place
Right, for
to,
sure.
to
Because the
inform parents.
in a much less dangerous version of the same story, we've had issues where I've gotten notification that the school's on lockdown. Don't know why. Don't know what to do.
Right.
And it's one of those. Well, you're talking about my kids, and yeah, I need something more than, well, we're just locked down at school right now, for me to not start freaking out. Those are my kids in there. If there's a threat to my kids, I am more than willing to do whatever I have to do to defend my kids, regardless. And if you're just gonna be like, oh, there's something happening, well, what is happening? What am I supposed to do? I'm not just gonna sit here and wait comfortably and pretend like it's not a big deal, because it is.
Absolutely.
And again, like you said, I think one of the problems right now, and I get it, there's a lot of information to digest, and there's the professionals doing what they're supposed to be doing about it. And there's a community impatience for what happened exactly. Understandably impatient about the situation. And again, as mentioned, we fill the vacuum with rumors and conjecture and what we heard from somebody who might know somebody who was actually part of the conversation. And I'm concerned that it's going to be one of those where it draws out long enough that we kind of, like you said, it's sadly, it's a regular occurrence. It's not a rarity anymore. And are we going to lose focus on getting the answers by the time the answers come out? That's a fear I have in this story.
Well, Seth, what I will say is, with all of the attention, I think, and there's frustration in the community. I don't think that it's going to lose. People are very determined to want to know what the truth is, and I'm one of them, and I'm going to make sure that does not die down, because whatever the truth is, wherever it lies and where accountability is, I'm going to stand on the truth, and I'm going to expect accountability. And again, I don't know what the truth is, because the facts have not been put out there yet. But I'm anxious to see that, whatever that is. I am concerned that we have the national climate is not good in situations such as these right now, and there are people who are professional folks who will go from city to city when they hear about different things like this, and everyone does not come with good intent.
Right.
And can do things that will be very disruptive or destructive in our city, and then they get to go home when we're here and have to deal with the aftermath of it. And so I'm just, in prayer, and anyone that I talk to, I just ask people to, if you want to protest, please do it peacefully. If you want to pray, that's perfect, because we absolutely need that. I'm asking that people not be provoking the police, because it appears that there may have been an incident of that here recently, and that's not the answer either. That is not the answer either. These people are trying to do their jobs every day, and I've always said that it takes a special person to get up every morning and go to work, put on a uniform, put on a gun, and not know if they're going to be able to come back home. That's something that most of us don't ever have to worry about. That's
Right.
not in our day-to-day jobs. And so I do appreciate, and I pray for them as well.
Right. I think there's a relationship problem there that I don't know how to fix it. It's one of those that gets talked about a lot. That relationship between the police and the community at large, whether it's a subset of the community like the Austin East neighborhood, or whether it's the city of Knoxville as a whole. Because I think that's one of the big things in how the national issues got so much gravity. A lot of people have that distrust of their local police force, whether their interest is your best interest or not, is one of those things it's been decades in the making, and it continues to grow. And then we have particularly large issues like the George Floyd case, which I read a story that a couple of cities have already called in their National Guard to be ready for that verdict coming out, because we don't know what's going to happen when if he's found not guilty or guilty or whatever. And so there's and the craziness, like you were saying, that it's not here. It's not our police that did this thing in the George Floyd case, but somehow those incidences are turning into violent protests around the country. Because again, maybe the George Floyd thing didn't happen here in Knoxville, but we have cases in Knoxville where the police department did something wrong, and so this is our catalyst, the last bit of the fuse before that bomb explodes locally as well. And I agree, it's something that is frightening, because I hate just riots in general are so dumb. It's like, why are you going to burn down your neighbor's business because you're mad at the cops? It doesn't fix the issue with the cops. It just kills your neighbor's business. I just like the I don't know, riots bother me, and they're so antithetical to what you're trying to get across. We're trying to fix a relationship, right. And so provoking and causing problems and then destroying your neighbor's business is usually not a solution. All right. Let's find something happy to talk about, something positive moving forward, going on here. Do you want to talk about the baseball stadium at all?
Oh, we can.
I'm sorry, the multi-use building. Yeah. Everybody gets mad at me when I call it a baseball stadium.
So the baseball stadium. Here's the thing. People are somewhat divided on the baseball stadium and what that's going to look like, what that's going to mean for Knoxville as a whole. My thing is this. I think it has a lot of momentum as far as support when people are looking at long-term investment in the city. This is going to be the biggest investment that we've seen in this city since the World's Fair. And at this point, I'm still waiting to hear what are all of the community benefit agreements? What are the community investments going to look like? Going back to the community that it's going to be adjacent to is the community where there was urban renewal, which people call urban removal. So I definitely want to see some commitments that are going to be for people who are, living in certain types of circumstances and in poverty. This is a great opportunity where maybe people they can work their way out of poverty level. Same excitement I have with Amazon coming to Knoxville as well as to Maryville. So with the stadium, I'm waiting to see. I've already heard about a few things that they're doing, but we've got to have, minority participation in all aspects of this stadium bill and the private development.
So we've got you're on your agenda tomorrow. Are you confirming the Sports Authority? Is that on the agenda tomorrow, or is that going to be a month out?
Yeah. So the Sports Authority Board is coming up on the agenda. The Sports Authority does not necessarily mean that it is a done deal as far as the stadium bill. That has yet to come. However, I think that we all know that this is a city and county decision, and from all indications, from the workshop that we had, there were very, very few questions from the county perspective, but a lot of questions from the city perspective. I know that both mayors are in support of this project moving forward. And again, one might say that this is something that just seems like it's just going to happen. So just make sure that we can make the best out of it as far as what is going to be poured back into the community. Because this could, we could look at this as an opportunity to help change people's lifestyles, if they can get jobs. If the stadium is going to be operational year round, what do those jobs look like? What do the salaries look like?
Right.
I know that Randy Boyd has made some personal commitments in the East Knoxville and adjacent communities. And he states that whether the stadium happens or not, that he's going to fulfill those obligations. And what I'll say about Randy Boyd, good person. He does a lot of things. He pours into a lot of communities. And we don't always hear about those things. But I do want to commend him for that. He seems to be a person that really does care about the communities. This, of course, is business on top of that. This is not just Randy Boyd's project, which I think sometimes we want to believe that and label that, but more to come. More to come. I'm waiting for a little bit more conversation around what is that going to look like for the community that you're going to be placed in.
Right, but I guess my concern is that as we confirm the authority, the Sports Authority, it basically takes it out of council and commission until we get into voting on the complete project. Or is there still going to be a ton? That's where I'm confused on trying to all the forum aspect of this is because the authority will be the one who is going to go through and recommend the plan to the council, right?
They'll be part of it, yeah. So they'll have all the intricate details as it relates to it coming before council. And also they may be where that community benefits agreement lies, which is going to be key, in my opinion. It's going to be very critical for me with this being my district.
Right, for sure. And so are we, I mean, I don't know. I've been reading up on it, trying to figure out who these different people are, as far as who has been appointed to be confirmed. Is there any pros, cons of anyone that you can speak to start with, or is it?
Yeah. So in looking at the demographics of the people that's been selected, and I started doing some research early on other sports authority boards such as Chattanooga, Nashville, Memphis, looking at the demographics, and it does appear to be people who are in different sectors of business. Pretty much similar to the Airport Authority Board. It's not a paid board, but it is a board that will have quite a bit of power as it relates to this stadium project, as well as any other upcoming sports initiatives and projects that might come into play. So, I see lawyers, I see development people, I see people who have sports backgrounds, people in real estate community. And so, I don't see any concerns as it relates to those folks that have, and even educators. There's people in there in higher education, because all of those things are going to matter especially when we talk about what's going to be the greater impact back into the community. What are going to be those benefits primarily is what I'm really concerned about.
Right.
So as you can see, that's my focus, and this is what I'm anxiously awaiting to see and hear about. But I will tell you that I was pleased to see that there were 3 African Americans who are nominated to serve on this board.
Okay. I will be probably reaching out to them as public figures once we get appointments and stuff like that, to try to talk to them a little bit more about what their specific specialty is going to bring to the table as far as conversation goes. Because I think that it's the one thing that I struggle with the most is what's it going to do to the neighborhood? Obviously, it's going to bring a lot of people in, which obviously bring work, but it also brings traffic and parking situations. Are we going to start pricing people out of their houses because it jacks the property value too high to pay the taxes on, and and then we get the whole gentrification conversation going on and stuff like that. And so, that's one of those that I don't understand the economics well enough to project out to that thing. So my long-term running thing that I said as a joke in one of my first interviews was I like the idea of looking into going metro. I think the sports authority thing is one of the things that brings it to light, and how the city and county are forced to work together on this particular situation. But it feels to me that with the way Knox County is growing, especially with some of the different the annex rules that are now in place, so the city's not going to physically grow by square mileage at any point in the near future, and how to balance budgets, and we have departments that overlap and all this kind of different stuff. I'm stuck. I'd like to see somebody write it out fully and get all the different parts and pieces, because I don't have the background to understand all these different little budgetary departments that exist and what should and shouldn't be a unified thing and the separated thing. But I'm interested in the idea. And I'm always interested in what people that are elected into office's feelings are on that idea for Knoxville as well. So what do you think? Yeah. Should we go metro or not?
So, well, I think it's worth exploring. I wouldn't be opposed to us exploring it at all, because I think that there's so many intersections as it relates to city council, city versus county. A lot of intersection there, even with, Metro Planning Commission,
right,
zoning, all those things. There's so many, we overlap on so many things. So would it make sense for us to have metro government so we're all sitting at the table at the same time?
Right. And one of the things Lundy talks about, all the time when I joke with her about metro, is that since she's the county commissioner that overlaps with you, when it's like a sidewalk project or something like that, the county tends to be like, well, that's city property, they'll deal with it, even though it's within the county. And so it's like one of those where it's a pass the buck kind of play. Which is another thing that I like Metro for taking out, is that is your district. We need to fix these sidewalks. It's not Lundy's district. It's not McKenzie district. It is District 7, whatever number we want to throw out there on there.
Right. and I think that's great, because what's interesting is that everybody comes, our complaints are really to the city. If you look at a county commission meeting versus a city council meeting, city council gets beat up consistently. Everything is a city issue. It sometimes feel like people forget that if you're in the city, you're still in the county.
Well,
When you talk about the homelessness, you never hear anyone referencing the county. It's all of it's every as you said, it's everybody's issue. It's not just one district, it's everybody's issue. It's not just a city issue.
right.
And even though the county engages, they don't hear the complaints. They don't get the things that we get, because people look to the city to solve that.
Right, because
And I want to circle back real quick when you talked about the stadium, price people out of their houses. That's happening already. I mean, the housing market is just crazy right now. I mean,
right.
if you look at some of these houses that are listed, they're houses that you wouldn't have been worth $100,000 in the past, that are now close to $200,000.
Right.
So that's already happening. And
For
when
sure.
we talk about gentrification, that train has left the station a long time ago. And this goes back to for people being able to become homeowners, to be
Right.
able to be in a position where they can buy property. Because if they can't, I mean,
Right, they're getting evicted, and then they have to find a
yeah,
new
they're
place, and
getting
they
evicted,
certainly
they're
can't
getting
afford
pushed
anything
out.
in their own neighborhood anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's something that's not just isolated to Knoxville. And sometimes we kind of live in a bubble. If everything that's going on in Knoxville has been happening everywhere else, I guess in a more rapid pace. But this is what people have to think about. I mean, housing market is crazy right now, and I
Right.
don't know if we'll ever see it get even out or not.
Well, it
But
comes
for a
to
person,
right. It
yeah,
comes. It's the inventory, which is always a weird thing to call houses is inventory, but that's what the realtors say about it. And I had Randy Payson, and we were talking about it. He's like, if you're in the city, there's no more single family dwellings. We can't. The city can't. We've got to have. At this point, we're growing so fast that we have to have. We are more densely populated, and we have to build to suit.
right,
Putting another McMansion neighborhood in is not going to do us any good, because they'll sell, and then we still have 100,
right,
200 families looking for houses. And if inventory is the issue, we got to figure out how to get more residents in here, residences, in here without taking up more acreage. We don't have the acreage to have that many houses. And one thing for me that I think's the coolest thing, I think that the Publix model right there on campus. I think any new project should be built like that. No more parking lots. I'm tired of looking at parking lots when I drive down Kingston Pike or Western or Magnolia or anybody. Like, just less parking lots. Have the parking underneath. Have the thing on top.
yeah,
So the parking lot is there. It's just not in front of the building. It's under the building. I think that thing was brilliant. All right, so last call. You've got better stuff to do than talk to me. One of my standard questions whenever I have an elected body on.
No, I've enjoyed it.
Good. One of my standard questions is I always want to know what is something that's happened or you've been working on or just in general that you don't feel like's gotten any coverage.
I don't think it's gotten any coverage.
Maybe not the coverage you think it deserves.
Yeah, I think everything's gotten coverage. I just think that the issues, the other things have kind of piled on. But I'm not going to say that it's not gotten the coverage. And to be perfectly honest with you, you'll notice I'm not a person that's always trying to jump in front of a camera. Unless if you see Gwen McKenzie jumping in front of cameras, it's really bad.
Well,
but I can't say that there's any one thing in particular that I don't feel has not had adequate coverage and has not had, there's not adequate attention and work being done on it. It's interesting. People think that, things are easier said than done, that we can make things happen instantaneously. And I thought that too, until I sat in this seat and actually start learning that there's processes that you have to go through. And so even if some of the things, and I'm sure a few of the things that I've had out there, including the task force and the restoration resolution, those things won't be completed on my term if I'm reelected. That Those are things that, will be for people in the future. But it's all about doing some good to help communities and help people be able to just have an even playing field and be able to thrive and raise their families in safe communities and neighborhoods, and have opportunities to pull themselves out of generational poverty, get a strong middle class, closing the wealth gap some more. And I think that there's a possibility with everything that we're looking at, the stadium and some other things, that those opportunities hopefully will be there to afford people that, and with Amazon. So that's my hope. That's what I'm going to be pushing, and also looking at how can we get more industry, how can we get more businesses here. This violence that we're seeing does not help when companies are looking at relocating or investing in our city. So that doesn't help. When you talk about the housing inventory, I'd love to see more affordable housing in the county. The city, you're absolutely correct, is more landlocked. Homeless issue. And so I think that there's so many things that, when you talk about metro government, that this may be a good time to even start looking back after we get past this election cycle.
Right.
What would that look like?
Yeah, because again,
all of us are at the table together and we're working collectively, city and county, on these issues. We very well may be able to get more things accomplished and to start solving some of these things instead of, talking about it. Maybe there's putting band-aids on it. I think we need a state mental health hospital again.
yep.
Again, that's out of our control. From a state perspective, hopefully at some point the governor will have some compassion around making that happen again, because it's definitely it's so needed. It is so needed. It breaks my heart to see people suffering from mental health issues being incarcerated.
Right. Yeah. The sheriff's office was told me about that. About how I can't remember what the number was, but it's a good number of people that are housed in Knox County Jail, as opposed to in a hospital where they should be. Because there's stuff. Yes, well, all right. I got a quick apology to Amelia Parker. I promised I'd bring something up that she asked me to ask you about, but I'll save it for.
Well, you can text it to me.
Save it for a future conversation. But definitely want to have you back when you get into campaign cycle, and probably a time or two before then. Just to see what's going on. I really appreciate you. I apologize I didn't get you the wine. I promised. But I've got I've got an outro to do, and you have a lovely, lovely day.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you, Gwen. Thank you for listening, everybody. That's Gwen McKenzie, District 6, Vice Mayor of the City of Knoxville. She is off